Trump administration. So these are all the facts. Now, the truth though is he has not ever said anything bad about international students who come to the US on a valid legal visa, like an F1 visa or a J1 visa. They come here to study and then convert to other valid visas, such as a work permit. He has never said anything bad about them. In fact, uh, he has actually said that it is kind of silly for the US to grant a degree to an international student from top schools and then have them leave to go compete with American companies. Trump is all about America first. So he's a businessman, so he understands the value of skilled and competent employees. And the last thing that he really wants to do is, at a very high level, make American companies as non-competitive. And so he does not want smart students to come here and then go back and start companies that compete with American companies, right? And then finally, on the night of November 8th, he was pretty conciliatory when he said, we call upon the best and the brightest to leverage their talent for the benefit of all. So it is going to happen, he said, right? So you may have seen his speech and go back and look at it. That's exactly what he said. So even this does not sound unwelcoming. So my take on this, I've been doing this for a long time, counseling students who come to the US. I do not think that things will materially change that much. Certainly on the F1 visa angle, I don't believe there will be much of a change. Now, there might be some programs that may be at risk, and I've written about this extensively as well. And there are two programs that I believe that will come under pressure because he has nominated Jeff Sessions. Sessions is an immigration hawk. He does not like the OPT extension program, nor does he like the H1B, the current H1B program. So I think there might be some move on Sessions. Sessions has now been nominated as the Attorney General, which is the topmost law. He's the topmost law officer. Think of him as the Home Minister in India, right? So he is the topmost law enforcement officer, and if he gets confirmed by the Senate, he has ambitions to revamp I should say STEM OPT, not STEP OPT, but the STEM OPT scheme is something that I think he wants to change. Some of these current benefits that students have about the OPT STEM visas, they were not passed into law. They were simply signed as an executive order by Obama, which means that the next president in office can simply rescind those orders. Okay, so I can talk about the STEM OPT in the question and answer session if anybody has any questions about the STEM OPT. The other thing is I'm pretty sure the H1B program and the L1P program will likely be overhauled. There is already a bill in the Senate. It has bipartisan support, and with somebody like Sessions pushing it, and with Trump's support, there is a potential that the H1B and L1B programs will likely be overhauled. However, the proposals that I have read, they tilt the balance in favor of international students. So if students come here, study here on a valid visa, and they convert to an H1B, those students, I think they'll make it easier for students. But what they will not do is to be so lenient in granting H1B visas to, as I said, tech companies in India like Infosys and Wipro who come here and who essentially take away American jobs. So I think the H1B program is going to be more tilted towards students in the coming years, uh, and that is something that is actually good news for my clients because all of my clients are Indian students who want to come to the US, or most of them at least. So this is where we stand. If you have any questions about what we discussed so far, certainly feel free to ask them now. And if you still have questions, you can email me, and as long as the questions are not very long, I'll be glad to answer those questions by email as well. So at this point, I'll turn this over to Sridhar for any questions. Go ahead, Sridhar.
The audience can send their questions through the chat window. There seem to be no questions at this point. I will keep monitoring it.
Okay, we'll stay on the line for a few more minutes to see if there are some questions, right, Sridhar?
Yes, yes.
So do we know how many attendees there are, Sridhar?
It comes at 21.
Okay. Any questions, Sridhar?
Yes, I'm just pasting it for you in the chat window.
Chat window.
Start long. Do you see it?
do I see the chat window again? Oh, right here.
It should be flashing right now. Three
Right.
dots. Yeah.
Okay, how is an option to Canada as opposed to US because of all the hassles one has to endure? Okay, right. This was asked at 5:19. So again, let me repeat. How is an option of Canada as opposed to the US because of all the hassles one has to endure with the H1B process in the US? Yeah, Canada is actually very, very welcoming. If you want to immigrate, Canada is a great country to consider. They have, Canada has always been at the forefront because they use what is called a points system to grant immigration, and Canada is facing very low birth rates, and as a result, they have been a lot more welcoming of foreign of legal immigrants to come to go to Canada. So, and all you really need to have for Canada is you need to have an employment offer, and if you do, then the Canadian government is fairly welcoming. They want immigrants to come to Canada or to go to Canada, work there, and pay taxes because Canada is a very progressive economy which relies on taxing, on heavy taxation. Uh, Taxation rates in Canada are up to 45%. So they want immigrants to come in, pay taxes into Canadian coffers so that the older Canadians can be looked after well. It is a highly socialistic economy, and so Canada is definitely a great option. Now let me again step back for a second. The the hassles one has to endure with the H1B process. Um, the hassle is only really one time, right? Once you get your H1B once for the first time, then the process becomes a lot easier. I mean, your H1B essentially you can hold on to your H1B. If you switch companies, these are all coded into law until those things change. It is fairly easy to move from one company to another company. It is fairly easy to have your H1B extended. Uh, it'll take a long time to get a green card right now, but the the key issue is until you get your H1B for the first time. And the point I was trying to make here is that if you're coming to the US as a foreign student, and if you earn a master's degree in the US, getting an H1B is fairly easy. You obviously have to have an employment sponsor, but um, the you can work for a year without an H1B visa simply because you graduated with a STEM degree. That is called the OPT visa. And then the OPT STEM extension, if you are in a STEM field, allows you to work for 2 additional years. So you can essentially be here for 36 months on a visa unrelated to H1B. And during that time, you'll really have 3 chances to apply for H1B. And I have I have not yet really heard of a case where somebody did not get an H1B and had to go back. There are a couple of cases, but those were not really merit worthy. So I cannot discuss those cases. There were other issues with those candidates. So yeah, Canada is definitely an easier option, but I wouldn't give up on the US just as yet. What about incidents of racism? That is, I've been here for 30 years, and I mean, I don't, I really, I haven't seen any of that. I mean, we live in Texas, and Texas went for Trump, and you know, there really, I mean, there really isn't any issue. The problem there is going to be always there's always going to be some racism in a foreign country. Canada, we used to live in Switzerland. There was some racism there as well, but I I don't think there is any issue there. Now, there have been some reports that if you go to a college campus, and if you're a proud Trump supporter, then you will likely be harassed. College campuses are very liberal, and they don't like Trump. But I don't think there is an issue. Certainly, college campuses are very safe. Um, many of the cities have decided to pursue what is called a sanctuary program, which allows them to, which gives them a certain amount of autonomy to protect immigrants from the federal government. And again, none of these things will apply to anybody on this call, because all of you will be coming here on a legal visa. Now, I understand that when we look different, people are not going to ask us what visa we are on. But as long as students stick to what they do best, which is study, go to the campus, study, and work on campus or whatever, uh, I don't think incidents of racism are going to go up simply because of what Trump said. I mean, we are living in this country, and we haven't faced. There has been no difference in our lives. Any other questions, Sridhar?
Yeah, none right now. We'll just give them a few more minutes.
Yeah. Take your time. But these are all very good questions. Let us not forget what Trump ran on. I mean, the media, especially because Obama has been president for 8 years, and he's African American. Um, what people don't understand, certainly from looking in from the outside, is that Obama went ahead and used his executive powers to to change the country, which is what he ran on. He said, change is what we believe in. But he kind of changed the country. He moved the compass too much to the left. If you look at all of his appointments, for example, in the federal government, they were almost like, uh, you know, uh, like, uh, it was almost like an Indian. You know how in India, when the prime minister takes office, and you have to have, let's say, 75 ministers or 80 ministers, the number of ministers goes up because you have to accommodate people from every different community, this religious minority, that minority, this, even the number of ministers goes up, um, because you want to have a diverse cabinet that represents every interest group. That is kind of what Obama did. I mean, his first attorney general selection was an African American. His second was an African American. He wanted more women there. He wanted more, and it was almost like a formula. Okay, so if there are 15 cabinet members, he would have like two or three women, two or three African Americans, a couple of black women, a Hispanic person. So essentially, what Obama did was he took he, quite a few Indian Americans were given appointments in the government. So he tried to make the federal government very diverse through his appointments. And certainly that is a good thing, but when you do it based more on a formula, and also when these people went in, they created programs that essentially divided Americans. Um, so there was a particular example that I always like to give. There was this Indian American, very smart girl. Her name is Vanita Gupta, and she's from Harvard Law School, and she is now in. She is the current Assistant Attorney General. So she has a lot of power. She has a lot of power to interpret laws. And what she did was she wrote a letter to the governor of North Carolina because there was a bathroom access issue. I do not know how many of you remember this, but in the state of North Carolina, what happened was that there, there is, when you go to a bathroom, there are men's restrooms and there are women's restrooms, and for the transgender people, uh, the issue was which bathroom should they use? Should they use the gender they should they use the bathroom of the gender that they identify with, or should they use the bathroom of the gender with which they were born? And so this is a very, very simple local issue. There was no need to make it such a big issue, right? So the state of North Carolina passed a law which said that henceforth, if you're a transgender person, you can only go to the bathroom that is identified on your birth certificate, regardless of what gender you believe you are today. And this created a big problem. And Vanita Gupta, this lady acting for Obama and Obama's Attorney General, she wrote a letter to the North Carolina governor and she said, if you don't change this law, then we will withhold federal funds to North Carolina colleges and universities. And many of you know that North Carolina State University, the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, these are all public institutions of great repute. And a lot of white Americans were turned off. They said, who is this lady? What are these guys doing? This is a state issue. Whether, a bathroom has, bathroom laws, the US government shouldn't be concerned about bathroom laws in the state, in a particular state. And so North Carolina was supposed to be a state that Hillary Clinton should have won, because that is the way everybody was thinking. But on election night, there were so many people who went and voted for Trump because and North Carolina went to Trump, and even the senator there who was supposed to lose the election, he won in a landslide. So this is what I am saying. So when you get this question about what about incidents of racism, you must try to understand what it is that Americans were talking about during this election. Okay, I'm glad we have one more question. Will the number of H1B visas that are granted, will that be decreased from the present number in the US? You can never be sure of this, but what will be my view on this? Yes, there is. Now let's step back. Every year, 85,000 new H1B visas are granted. So once you have an H1B visa, you are not counted in the new number of visas that will be issued, because H1B transfers are not counted in this. So once you get an H1B visa, uh, you can always have it unless you lose it because you did something wrong. So will the number be decreased? That is possible. In fact, the Senate bill of 2013 increased the number of visas, but given the way the campaign went, I will be really surprised if that number goes up. So the 85,000 is now more like 65,000 because of a law that didn't get renewed. So it'll take some time, but I nobody knows. But I do not think it will increase. Let me say that it is not going to go up. But for a student like for many students here on the call, um, the back door to that is the OPT extension program. Because the OPT extension program, there is no limit, right? So let me actually go here. Well, I'm not showing my screen. Let me show my screen 1 second. Okay, I'm broadcasting my screen now. So let me go to OPT extension. Yeah, see, the number of OPT STEM visas um, in has risen from 29,000 in 2008 to nearly 123,000. So remember, this is the number of automatic visas that students can get simply for obtaining a STEM degree. That is already at 123,000 in 2013, for which we have numbers. So I'm sure that's more like 150,000. That is almost twice the number of H1B visas, right? So yes, the next question is how will we convert all of these 150,000 to only 85,000? Yes, that is an issue, but I think over time, if you have 3 years, uh, it kind of works itself out. Some of these guys will go get a PhD. Uh, there are ways to stay here, but I don't think the number of H1B visas will increase. To answer that question.
Those are all the questions, Rao. But if you like, we could stay online for a few more minutes. Or
Yeah,
it's up to you.
I'll stay for one more minute. And again, I want to thank you all for your participation, um, and also for all the questions. I'll stay on for a minute. So, Sridhar, do you want to end this?
A couple of questions came in.
Okay. I see it. Which US state is the best for education in terms of education and employment opportunities? So let me repeat this. Which US state is the best for education in terms of education and employment opportunities? Um, I actually have a separate presentation that only talks about this, and I will work with Sridhar to have a webinar sometime in January, maybe after the ICT IEE 2017, maybe mid to late January, we can have a webinar. The best way to answer this question is really to look at what it is that you want to do, because if you are in, let us say you're in mechanical engineering, then obviously you want to be in the Midwest. If you're in computer science or electrical engineering, you probably want to be, obviously you want to be in California. You also want to be in the Northeast, like in the states of Massachusetts and maybe Virginia, in the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic. Um, you certainly want to play in Texas regardless, because Texas is a very big state. The state of Washington is very good. So really a lot of it depends on what it is that you're studying. If you want to be in like biomedical, there are other states which are very good. Ohio is very good for biomedical. Pennsylvania is very good. Minnesota is good. So really, I need to look at what it is that you're studying, and also the states will really depend on what it is that you want to do. And as I said, please keep in touch with Sridhar, and we will definitely have a webinar uh, sometime in the first, sometime in January. Will the average wages in the STEM field decrease? So the question is, will the average wages in the STEM field decrease? Well, supply and demand, right? So far, that is the argument that people are making to limit the number of H1Bs. They're saying that one of the reasons that we don't need any H1Bs is that the wages in the technology sector have largely stayed constant, and in some cases have actually fallen. So remember, the main reason that the H1B program was implemented in the 60s was that when there was a labor shortage, you could not just go and manufacture that particular labor overnight. Say you're talking about a petroleum engineer, and all of a sudden, let us say the oil and gas industry has a need for new petroleum engineers because new projects are coming on live, then I cannot just go and manufacture new petroleum engineers. And so when there is a labor shortage, what happens is that the salary of these engineers goes up, supply and demand. Okay, so what the H1B program allowed companies to do was to import petroleum engineers from other parts of the world on the H1B visa. These were temporary work permits, only granted for 3 years and could be renewed to 6 years. But H1Bs were not generally used as a vehicle to immigrate, because that was not the intent. These engineers would come in, they would serve the labor shortage out, and in the meantime, more and more students would realize that petroleum engineering was a great career. They would enroll, spend 4 years, graduate with a petroleum engineering degree, and apply for jobs. So that takes about 4 years. So you could be on an H1B for 6 years, and within that time, there would be more new local petroleum engineers produced, and as a result, the shortage would go away, and all these foreign engineers could be sent home. That was the way the H1B visa was launched 50 years ago. Now what has happened is, um, if you look at the wages in the tech sector, say you're a Java programmer, the wages of a Java programmer, maybe in California they've gone up because California is a crazy economy. But if you look at the overall country, the wages of a Java programmer have stayed rather steady. And when the wages have stayed rather steady, it means that there is no shortage. And so critics of the current H1B policy are saying that because the wages are staying the same, it is dishonest for companies to say that we have a labor shortage and therefore we have to import STEM graduates from abroad. This is partly what Trump ran on. We should have an America First policy where we should give jobs to people who already are here. So the answer to your question is, will the average wages in STEM field decrease with more immigration? Definitely, they will. The the wages will decrease or will stay the same. So many people are coming in. 236,000 students from India entered the US this year alone. This number was only like 50,000 students about 15 years ago. So a lot of Indians and a lot of Chinese and a lot of people from other countries are coming here, and therefore the additional labor is keeping wages down. The answer, as I said, is yes. The average wages in STEM fields will probably stay the same or will decrease. In California, all bets are off. So let's not talk about California, right? California is like a different country altogether. I hope that answers your question. These are great questions, Sridhar.
Yes, yes. Unfortunately, I think it's exam time, and that's why the attendance is low.
Yeah, I can understand.
Yeah, we should have the one you propose next month.
Yes, yeah. You're going to be busy, right, with ICT, IE. I cannot make it. I need to call Dr. Vidila today,
Yeah,
but
after the
I
13th
cannot
we
make
can
it
have it.
this time.
Yeah, after
Pardon
the
me?
14th we can have
Yeah, after the 14th should be fine.
it. Yes.
Great.
So let's close, and I will send you the recording.
Great. Thank you again very much, everybody, and thanks again, Sridhar.
Thanks.